Okay, well, we are going to get started. Just a reminder to stay on mute. Welcome, everybody. My name is Sherry Samarusti. I'm the Associate Executive Director. I've been with the organization for 28 years, give or take, um, and proud to lead the mission operations team. So, in a moment, we're going to virtually meet the team. We are going to do some volunteer recognition. I'm going to tell you a little bit about a mission, give a mission moment, which is just sort of why we do what we do. And then we'll introduce Joe to talk to you about flying missions. So this is the mission operations team. There's myself, Alejandro Ramirez, who is our operations manager, Maddie Eichten, who is a mission operations coordinator, Rochelle is a mission operations coordinator, as is Logan, who was in volunteer services. He just moved over as a coordinator when Natalie Peters, who many of you might know, stepped down end of last week. And David Nathan is our volunteer services coordinator. And now I am going to introduce him to talk to you about First Missions.
Yeah, thanks, Sherry. And thanks everyone for joining us. So, what we like to do every month is take a moment to recognize our volunteers. And since our last meeting, just over a month ago, we've had almost a couple dozen pilots fly their first missions. So you can see their names listed there. And then over to the right, pictured here is one of those pilots, Kara Lee, and that's her flying Zoe to Camp Orkila. We've also had one of our Earth Angels drive his first mission, David Benton. So big shout out to this new cohort. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And I'll pass it back to Sherry for mission moment.
Thanks, David. So this picture here that you're seeing is Fred Klarmeyer and his passenger Heather. Heather is coming home from a camp for kids with kidney disease on Orcas Island. And then also pictured there are Fred's furry friends who fly with him on all of his missions. Uh, Fred recently made these comments based on this mission, and I thought they were fun to listen to. So Fred said, Dr. Michael Moore and I picked up Heather from her Angel Flight summer camp on Orcas Island to bring her home to Deer Park, the closest airport to her home in Colbert. Angel Flight originally had her scheduled to Spokane, but that was almost an hour drive to her home, and Deer Park Airport was only a few minutes away. Dr. Mark and I did almost a repeat of last year's mission for Heather from the same camp. Heather said it was a wonderful time for her and her fellow campers and had thanks for Angel Flight for this opportunity. Her caregiver April was with her son. Her caregiver April and her son picked up Heather from the Deer Park Airport terminal. But while they were waiting for the ride home, there were some pilots who had a 2-for-1 burger meal, and they bought burgers for Heather and enjoyed her company. Fred says, thanks, Angel Flight, for making this happen. Fred started flying missions for Angel Flight in 1999 and has flown 274 missions. And while he's not pictured here, most of those were with his beloved dog Jasper at his side, and Jasper actually joined Angel Flight and had his own Angel Flight badge. So with that, I would like to introduce Joe. Joe Kellogg is an Angel Flight volunteer pilot. He's flown 61 missions, and from here, I'll let him tell you the rest.
Hey, glad to be here and honored to be asked to do this. And hopefully, as I go through this, if you have some questions at the end, love to be able to hear what your questions might be, and hopefully we can answer for you. I am located in northern Colorado, which is Fort Collins, and my aircraft is a Piper Meridian. I have a little over 1,500 hours of flights. Next slide. So, the question is, why do I fly Angel Flights? And I think, it has a deep meaning for me, and I think probably for most Angel Flight pilots. And I find that, these people are very thankful for what we do for them, and I will always tell them I get more out of it than they do. I mean, I just really enjoy being able to learn, talk to them, understand, some of their struggles there, and be able to be helpful in any way that we can. And I think most pilots probably would say that. And I think, like anybody, we also donate to other charities, but this one's a little bit more. And so, I mean, it's more than just giving money. It's being out there and helping them, holding their hand, helping them get to the airplane. And so it's just very meaningful for me, and I think for most pilots, you'll find the same thing. Go to the next slide. Okay, so when we talk about what is your first mission, how do I plan for it? And I can just kind of go through the process that I have. First of all, I would recommend uh, when you look at missions that are available, I would look for a mission where the patient has flown before. That would be helpful. Certainly, new people are fine as well, but they're going to have some additional questions and uncertainties, and so I think I would look for someone who's had another mission before. The first thing that I do when I'm looking at a possible mission is I'll do some research. I'll look at the airport that is the destination airport, and I want to know about the runway information. Is the runway long enough? Do they have two runways in case there's a lot of crosswind? I look at the forecast winds available, and then I'll look at their instrument approaches to see what those are available. And when I fly missions, I will generally always fly as IFR under IFR. And going to an unfamiliar field, it's just always better, I think, to fly an approach. Even if you're not flying under IFR rules, I would still fly the approach anyway, just so that that I have the right clearance, and it's much easier than trying to find the airport. I find the other thing that I look at, particularly in my area where I'm in Colorado, and I fly a lot of missions in Wyoming and Montana, that kind of thing. If the airport is near a mountain, I want to look at what are the departure procedures so that I'm just familiar with, being able to follow along with that and avoid high mountains. The other thing that I want to know is the FBO. So I'll look at the FBO, I'll see what the fuel prices are, what the hours of operation, if they have any landing fees. Now, there's a lot of landing fees that we're starting to see around the country. And most of the time, if you tell them that you're with Angel Flights, they will waive that landing fee and often give you a discount for fuel. So it's always good to ask. I'll also look at the comments, and I do that with the app that I use is ForeFlight, and so I can see the comments from other pilots about the FBO and the facility. And then, I'll decide if that's a good airport or not. Sometimes we can change it to a different airport, particularly if it's if it's a two-leg or three-leg mission where I want to meet, and the other pilot might want to meet, could be a different airport than what they have scheduled. And so a lot of times you just talk to the other pilot and we can decide to change those if that's what, if that's going to work out. Um, and then uh, the weight and balance. So I always look at that and kind of calculate more. I'll add 5 pounds per passenger, and then I'll also add 10 pounds for their baggage. And a lot of times, they say they have a 15-pound backpack, and when you pick it up, you think, "Oh my gosh, that's 25 pounds." So I'm not sure if they truly understand weight, but and how it affects us. So I always add that just to be safe when I'm doing my weight and balance, whether or not in my decision whether or not that's a good mission for me. We can go to the next slide. The first thing that we do is, once I get that, I select a mission, and then Angel Flight assigns it to me. I will uh, put their content information in my phone, and the first thing I'll do is I'll just send them a little text. And this is the example of the text that I send. I just tell them who I am, that I've been assigned with Angel Flights, and I'm going to be flying you from this destination to this area. I do remind them, that try to limit their fluids 2 hours before flight. I kind of learned that the hard way. One of my earlier missions, I did have a passenger who I did not tell them that, and of course they drank a lot of coffee and ended up almost having an emergency on the plane. But I did carry along one of those emergency bathroom things, and they were able to use that. So after that, I always make sure that I tell them that, and then when I show up at the FBO and we meet them, the last thing before we walk out onto the tarmac, I always make sure everybody's used that restroom, at least ask them to do that. So, and since then, I haven't had an issue. So that's always, something that I want to make sure that I cover. And then I
Mm.
will often send them the address of the FBO. So, where we're supposed to meet. I want to make sure that we meet at the same place. So I will text them the address that we're going to meet at. Next slide. So after I've been assigned and I've sent that message off, the first thing I do is I start looking at the weather. This will be about 4 days out. So about 4 days before the flight, I start looking at the weather. And the weather in this area is always changing. So I don't get too dialed in too much, but what I'm looking at is, the 6 to 12 day or hour progs, and I'm looking generally at just what the trend is going to be on the weather. The other thing I like to do through ForeFlight is I look at the daily, hourly weather for the destination, and then a number of airports on my route, and that's also a pretty good indication. Kind of gives me a trend of what it's going to look like. And then as we start to get closer, you can go ahead into the next slide there. I'll start generally looking at the weather multiple times a day. And I'm really starting to focus on, what the weather patterns are, where the highs, the lows, and the flow. I also look at the isobars, and I try to determine what the turbulence will be like along the wind, the turbulence, those kind of things. And if there are some concerns, I'll start sharing that with the passenger, telling them, hey, I'm watching the weather. We've got a weather front coming in, so I'll just keep an eye on it and I'll let you know if anything changes. That kind of a text, just to keep them up to date. There's also been times when there's been a weather event and I'm starting to get concerned that I'm not going to be able to make the flight. I will then communicate usually to Angel Flight, let them know what's going on and see if there's a backup. Um, and just try to keep everybody in the loop as to what I'm thinking in terms of the weather. We can go to the next one. Next slide. Safety is obviously a top priority, and so weather is a big concern with that. But in my area, turbulence is even a bigger concern. So I fly along the Front Range of Colorado, and we have a lot of turbulence here in the spring and in the fall. And even though the turbulence would not be bad enough for me to fly personally, I have to think about the passenger. And these are people who generally might not have a lot of experience in small aircraft. And I don't want them to have, a bad experience also. So turbulence, I have canceled some flights because I just felt the turbulence was going to be too much for them to be flying through. And sometimes we've been able to reschedule, maybe the next day. And I've had that a couple of times where I have one passenger I've flown quite a bit from Centennial to Casper, Wyoming, and this was the case. I know since I've flown him several times, I know he's staying with a relative, and I just said, hey, the turbulence is really bad today. Does it make sense if we go tomorrow morning? He said, no problem. We just went the following morning. It was smooth air. So, you know, being able to communicate with the passenger, that might be an option. And then, you know, we as the final day gets there, I have to make some, ask myself some real questions here. And the number one is can I fly this mission safely? Is there a weather concern? Is it a turbulence concern? Sometimes it's been wind, where the crosswind component is just so strong at the destination airport that maybe I need to delay the flight for a few hours, or maybe I need to try to find another airport that might work, or maybe I might not be able to fly that runway, and so might have to cancel that mission. So I need to ask those questions and uh, make sure that I'm focused mostly on the comfort of the passenger and their safety, not not if I would fly it myself, but would I fly it with somebody who is not very familiar with small airplanes. And so that's kind of how my thinking goes. And if I have a two-leg or three-leg mission, I want to make sure that I'm in constant communication with those other pilots as well. And they're doing the same thing with me. And so we're just always on the same page. If we do need to cancel, I will just communicate that to Angel Flight, and they will take care of the rest from there, right? They will communicate that with the passenger, and in many cases, these flights are not guaranteed. Sometimes they might have a commercial opportunity, um, but I let Angel Flight take care of that, if I decide that I need to cancel. Next slide. And then, we're meeting at the FBO. So at this point, I always assume that most of these people don't have a lot of experience with small aircraft if this is my first time flying this passenger. And so I want to be using clear communication with them, and I'll ask them what is their experience with small aircraft? What is their flying experience? Sometimes I find out, well, they have a lot of it, and they have, no concerns whatsoever. Other times it's somebody who hasn't flown a lot, commercial or small aircraft. And so in those cases, I want to use clear communication, and I want to go through the normal things. So I talk about sounds, the different sounds that they're going to hear, the motions and sensations that they're going to experience in a small plane. And then I ask them, what are your concerns? And sometimes they'll say they have none, and other times they'll ask a question, one way or the other. I try to answer it the best that I can, and then I then start talking about the flight today. So I want to, uh, give them a breakdown. We're going to go out there. We're going to get buckled in. We're going to take off. We're going to climb to this altitude. There's going to be some turbulence on the way out. It's going to be some minor bumps. Uh, if I know that we're going to be flying through some layers of clouds, I'm going to tell them we're going to go through some clouds. It will be a little bumpy when we do that. I will tell you to tighten your seatbelt. It's nothing to be concerned about. And if we're going to cross a frontal boundary, which we seem to do a lot out in this part of the country, same thing. It's going to get bumpy for about 10 to 15 minutes before and 10 to 15 minutes after that, crossing that boundary, but it shouldn't be much. It'll be a little bump here and there. So I try to alleviate any concerns that they have and kind of give them a game plan of what we're going to do. And then we get out to the airplane. Oh, I guess I jumped ahead. So I also file a flight plan, which I kind of talked about before. And I find flying in the system, under IFR rules, when I'm flying with a passenger, I think is something that we should all try to do. And the reason is because air traffic control is also helping me do that job, right? They're looking out for traffic. I'm flying at a higher altitude. Generally, it's going to be smoother. And in case of case unexpected weather pops up, they're going to be able to help me seamlessly navigate through some complex airspaces like the Denver Bravo airspace is. Uh, and so I've always found it a benefit to do that. So I will file that plan, and then I get my briefing right there on ForeFlight. So I do the complete briefing through the destination and en route. Um, get all of the NOTAMs right there. So it's actually saves you a lot of trouble, I think, to do that. At the very minimum, you should fly, flight following. I have VFR flight following at the very minimum, but if you can file the flight plan, I would certainly do that. Next slide. So this is something that I've not done because my transponder is just, I haven't gone to a shop, and they have to be able to set that up to use the Angel Flight call sign. I just use my own. I have heard other pilots who say they're Angel Flight, but they just make that announcement to air traffic control when they're getting a radio change. I've not really done that either. Uh, but if you want to do that, you have to have a programmable transponder, and you have to be able to the air traffic control has to see the same squawk code um, that they see on their screen that has to match the flight plan. And so that's something that I haven't done, but I know that some guys do. And then the next slide there. I think this is probably the biggest thing is that when you're communicating with a passenger, particularly when you're flying, it's very important to have a calm demeanor. Your tone is probably what they're going to pick up on more than anything. And so if you are in airspace like the Denver class Bravo airspace where the air traffic control is talking very quickly and you're going through a lot of different radio changes and heading changes and altitude changes, and you might start to get a little anxious. You want to make sure that you keep a calm demeanor, a calm voice, because they're going to hear that, right? So even when I'm climbing through different air and I'm about ready to go into a cloud, I want to tell them calmly, hey, you know what? There's a cloud up here. Looks like we're going to pass right through it. It's probably going to be a little bit bumpy. Let's go ahead and tighten your belt. And so just focus on what that tone is. And I think the passengers will be calmed by that. So the other thing is in the aircraft, I have a little tub, and in the tub I have extra bottles of water. I have Kleenex tissues. I have some sick bags which have never been used, and then some soft wipes and a blanket. The other thing is that I offer them headsets to reduce the sound in the aircraft, or they can listen to music, but I give them that option. And I think that's a big thing for, you know, their comfort, and that's important. You can go to the next slide. So as I'm flying, I'll talk to them. We're taking off. We're ready to take off. Are you ready to go? Yep, we're ready to go. Okay, tighten your belts. And then they tighten their belts. We take off. We're climbing. And a lot of times the passengers actually like listening to air traffic control. I can switch over and I ask them if they want to listen to music or air traffic control. 9 times out of 10, they actually want to listen to air traffic control. So they kind of hear what's going on anyway when they're giving us different altitude assignments or heading assignments. If they're not, then I want to be able to communicate that. Okay, we're ready to climb some higher. We're gonna level off here. Uh, when you level off and you're pulling back the power, I find that it's better to tell the customer or the client that we're going to pull back power rather than them hear the power being reduced and wondering why is that happening. And also the same thing, we're getting ready to descend, and so I'm going to pull the power back and we'll start to descend. So I always communicate what I'm about ready to do, and I find that they appreciate that. And let's see, you can go to the next slide. And one other point, I guess, particularly depending on where the airport is, but the bigger the airport, like at Centennial Airport here in Colorado, sometimes they'll park you pretty far back on that tarmac, and you'll have a lot of passengers who can't really make that walk. And so I'll ask them, are you comfortable doing that? Or I can call out a golf cart. And so almost all of these airport FBOs have a golf cart, and if you ask them, they'll drive out there, pick up the passenger, and then drive them back to the terminal so they don't have to walk. And that probably happens at least half of the time. So always be sure to ask, uh, if they need assistance, or even if you think they might, maybe just go ahead and have the FBO bring the cart out anyway. And that's it. Hopefully, uh, I didn't talk too fast and give enough information there that you know gives you guys a rounded idea of what goes on in a mission. But I would love to hear some questions.
Thank you, Joe. Very nice. Feel free to raise your hand literally, raise the little hand, which I think Jim Haley has up, or to drop your questions in the chat and we can answer them that way as well. So, Jim, do you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, Sherry. I was a lot of times, and I know you briefly touched on it about alternate airports than what's listed in the Angel Flight request. Do you find that they are more receptive to that than not?
Yeah, I've never had a problem with that. Particularly if it's a two-leg mission. Sometimes the other pilot will actually recommend it. Hey, the fuel price is lower over here, or what have you. But uh, if not, there's been times when I've had that request where either the runway was a little short, or when I looked it up, the FBO really wasn't open very long, or the facilities didn't have the jet fuel that I need, something like that. So I would recommend it to another pilot. Hey, what about this airport here? And I've never had a problem.
Okay, great. It's just a lot of the flights, I'm in Boise, and a lot of the flights are from Salt Lake to Boise or to Reno or stuff. And I hate going into Salt Lake. I'd rather go to South Valley or something over there to pick somebody up than into Salt Lake. So, okay, thank you.
Yep, yep.
Micor, go ahead.
Yeah, hi there. My name's Miker. Thanks for all the information. I'm wondering how often you fly with a mission assistant. I'm somebody without a plane, but a big heart for the organization. So,
I've never had well, actually, I do have a guy that I fly with. He's a captain at United Airlines, and he's flown with me like 3 times. He always says, hey, when you have a mission, let me know. And I always let him know, but most of the time he can't go. But other than that, I've had a mission assistant that signed up to fly a mission with me, but then ended up canceling. So it would be welcome, though. Yeah, that's fine. It would be, if we were able to do that, shoot, I'd let you work the radios, and then you know, I'll just focus on flying and having a good time.
great. Thank you.
And Micor, that's a pretty common question. We have a lot of folks like yourself. And where are you located?
I am in transition between finishing flight school and finding a CFI job. So, I'm in the Pacific Northwest right now in Spokane, Washington, but did a lot of training out of Centennial and Colorado Springs. So, a little bit of everywhere.
Okay, great. All right. Anybody else?
Jerry, we have a question in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. What restrictions do FBOs have in letting rental aircraft being used? To my knowledge, none. Um, we have a lot of renters. I think we have more owners than we do renters in the organization, but still, we have a lot of people who rent either from FBOs or from flying clubs. So there's no restrictions. The only thing that you need to be aware of is that you need to make sure that you have through the flying club or the FBO the required insurance, unless you have your own renter's insurance. Thanks, Hank. Anyone else? By the way, Fred, I see you there. I hope you were on early enough to see the little shout out we gave to you. So, um, any more questions?
I have a question. Um, my question is, do you have any tips on briefing passengers about emergencies in a way that doesn't frighten them? I mean, I am out here in Hawaii, and so an engine failure going between the islands would mean ditching in the ocean, and that's something we definitely have to prepare our passengers for. But I usually just fly with other aviators, and so briefing somebody who's not familiar with small airplanes and emergencies in them is, yeah, I'd love to get like tips on how you don't scare them, but also make them prepared.
That's a great question. And what I always tell them is that in the unlikely event that we have a catastrophic engine failure, the plane becomes a glider and we are gliding. So I think a lot of perception is okay, the engine goes out and we fall out of the air. So no, that's we're gliding. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is that I'm going to do a full engine run up before we take off to make sure that everything is fine. And in most cases, if we do have some kind of an engine problem, I'm going to see that, you know, within the aircraft. I'll see it on the gauges. One of my indicators will start showing that there may be a problem, and in that event, we'll divert to the nearest airport and make a landing. So, you know, once they hear that, they're okay. It's pretty good. Like in most cases, an engine failure isn't going to come completely out of the blue, right? There's going to be a trend there that's going to be developing, and we're going to take action as soon as we start seeing that, even if it's a false indicator, right? We'll divert to an airport closer, make a landing, and assess.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
Actually, Ellen, this question just came up recently about flying over water. And one of our safety officers, I think, is going to write an article about that particular issue. So keep your eye open for that article.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
in your case, you would tell them if you do have to land in the ocean, right? You're gonna land. How you're going to do it. Gear up, and then you do have the flotation devices and things like this. We'll step out onto the wing. The aircraft will float for however long, right? You probably know that. I mean, it's going to float for a while. We'll get out on the wing. We'll open up the floating devices, and we'll call for help before that happens. I mean, I would just go through what your procedure would be with
Right.
them and just talk calmly and ask any questions. And I think just doing that will alleviate their concern.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because that's not something I want to have to brief somebody on if it was happening at the moment, right? I want them to be prepared ahead of time. So
Yeah, no,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
flying out
Well,
there in
thank you.
Hawaii though is pretty nice though, huh?
It is, except for these long overwater flights that, yeah, they're, you are aware that you're out there out of glide range to land for quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's nice.
Ron, thank you for your comments. Hank, You mean applying for Angel Flight to become an Angel Flight volunteer that you're not already one and you want to know how to do that?
Yeah, Sherry.
Okay, great. So David will drop in the chat his email address, and he whoops, if I could speak, you can email him and he will make sure you get all set up for that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there you go. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you all for coming today. We appreciate all of you for your efforts towards Angel Flight. We couldn't do it without you. All of the stories you hear are because of volunteers like yourself. Joe mentioned that he gets more out of it than he thinks passengers do. And we hear that time and again from our pilots who really feel that they get more out of it than the people who think they're being helped. So, Joe, your presentation was great, very thorough. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.